All right, our structure is in place. So now let's finally start setting up our functionality. And here's what I would want to do. When the component, the Stripe checkout, or I guess more precisely, checkout form mounts, what I would want is to send the cart data, the cart, total amount, shipping fee, and clear cart to my function. So the function we haven't created yet. So first, I guess let's create that function so we can see something. So we're going to go here with functions and we're going to create a new one. And whatever you create as a function name, of course, you can navigate in the URL bar. So in here, I'm going to go with create hyphen payment and we're going to say intent.js. Okay, that's going to be my function name. And for time being, we'll simply grab all of this and just copy and paste. And the same thing, we have exports, which is a keyword, and then we need to have a name of handler. That's our function, and we're looking for event and context. Now I'll remove these items here, and we can access it, of course, in Netlify Functions and not hello, because now the name is different. So we're going to go with create payment and intent over here. That's going to be the URL and whatever is the domain. And as far as what we're sending back, well, first of all, I want to see what is going to be in the event. So we're going to go with console log and I'll print out the first parameter. First parameter we pass in the function. And this is going to be payment intent. And then in the Stripe checkout, what I would want is, like I said, grab my cart values and I would want to pass in the cart, total amount, and shipping fee. And once the component mounts, I would want to set up a post request. Now, why am I able to set up a post request? Well, because if we stop the server and if we go with Netlify dev, we should be able to navigate to that endpoint, correct? We already talked about it before, where the moment we created that hello, we had a new endpoint on our server. So this is going to be, of course, where we set up that payment intent. Now I don't need a new tab open. I'm just going to refresh this one. But if we go with / Netlify Functions, not hello, but we're going to go with create payment and then hyphen intent, you should see this payment intent. If you don't, again, please don't follow along, fix this bug first, and then continue with the videos, because none of what we're going to do later is going to make sense if you don't see this payment intent. And what's more interesting for me here is this one, the event that we console logged. And as you can see, you can get a bunch of useful info about, well, what is the request, correct? So here we have the path, for example, then we have a method and all that good stuff. So now what I would want from my Stripe checkout, when this component mounts, I would want to use Axios to post my data. Because basically what I would want is past what is in my cart, what is the total, what is the shipping fee, and all that. I would want to post that to this function. And in that function, I'm going to communicate with Stripe. At the moment, we're just returning some dummy data. But eventually, this is where we'll communicate with Stripe. So let's start that setup. We're in the create payment. And I think for the time being, I can just close the integrated terminal. I would want to set up try and catch because there might be an error as well. And in here, let's go with const. I'll console log what we're getting back because eventually this is going to be important. Then we go with await because this is going to be asynchronous, of course. And remember how previously we always used axios.get. So we were performing a get request. Now in this case, we are sending something to the server. Now again, our server is our serverless Netlify function. The idea is exactly the same, where if you have HTTP request, post request, you're sending something to the server. And in the Axios, you do it this way, where you go with Axios, then dot post. So now this is a post request. and we need to pass in a few things. First of all, well, what is going to be the URL? And URL needs to match what we have here for create payment intent. Please don't send this to the hello. It's just not going to make sense. So since it is on a saved server, we go with / and then the name Netlify, then functions folder, and then we go with create. And by the way, let me close the sidebar, create payment, and then intent. That's the first thing. Now, the second thing, we need to pass in the data. So what we're sending. And again, we need to stringify it. It needs to go as a string. So we go with JSON, stringify, and here there are three things that I would want to pass in. So I'm going to set up the object, and in the object, I'll pass in the cart, I'll pass in the shipping fee, and I'll pass in total amount. So these are the three things that I would want to pass in. And again, this is happening when the component mounts. Right away, I pass in the cart. So whatever are the cart values, I pass in the shipping fee and the total amount. So I'll save it over here. And what you should see in the console is another console log. Now, of course, we do need to refresh over here. So we have a new set of data. And then check it out. Once you refresh, since in the create payment, we're logging the event, what do you see in the event body? I have cart. So these are the items that I have in cart. I have shipping fee, and I have total amount. Now, of course, it is a string. So a more useful setup would be if we would parse this body. And this is exactly what we're going to do. So I'm going to go here with const, and then I'll say cart. And essentially, I'm just destructuring the properties that are in my object. Then we'll say shipping and underscore fee and total amount, of course, total underscore amount. And that one is equal to JSON parse because I would want to parse it. And I need to pass in event or however you call this parameter and then dot body. And if you scroll up a little bit, again, there's a bunch of useful information essentially about the request that is coming in. But notice here, let me see, maybe I already scrolled past it. Headers, no. So path stays the same, but notice the method. So now we're posting. Now we're sending this data to the server. And of course, our server is our Netlify function. Now, if you're not using Netlify function, that's why you would need to actually set up a proper server on Heroku or on the DigitalOcean or whatever. Okay. And I mean, you can either console log the cart or you can simply set up here body. And again, just for the time being, I'm going to go with JSON stringify and let's send back the cart. And in order to make it easier, I'll also console log the cart like so. Then we need to refresh and then we'll scroll down and we should see the cart in a console. And there it is. Now we have our cart. Now, if you will navigate directly to our .netlify and then .functions, or I'm sorry, / functions create payment intent, you'll get an error because we're trying to parse this as if we would always have the body. So in this case, yes, we have the post request. That's why we're sending it back. That's why I can see it in the console. But if, for example, there's a GET request, we're right away grabbing the body. So I think this would be a good scenario where I'm just going to set up if and else, where I'm going to say if event and then body actually exists, only then I'm sending back this one. Otherwise, I'm just going to say return and we're going to say, I don't know, status code. Again, this is not a production application, so it doesn't really matter. But I'm going to go with status code and we'll say body and we'll say create payment intent. Now, again, I'm only doing this because I don't want to get some bugs if I right away navigate to the page. So I can clearly see that my cart is there because I'm console logging. So it is coming to this function, but if you'll simply navigate using the URL bar, it's not going to work. Why? Well, because when we use the browser to navigate there, create payment intent? Well, we're performing a GET request, but what I would want is, of course, the POST request. So all our logic is going to be when we're setting up the POST request. But if we just navigate in the browser, then we just get create payment intent. Again, there's multiple ways how you can set it up for production environment. In our case, we're just avoiding the most common bug. That would be as we're navigating through the browser. So that should be our initial setup where we pass our data to the server. And now we'll have to do our magic in the server where we will connect to the Stripe, get back our token, the secret client token, or whatever it was called as far as the state value, client secret, that was the name. And then we'll be able to move on in our checkout. So in this case, let me navigate to localhost 888. So of course that is going to be my checkout. And then we'll just be setting up the payment, the create payment intent function, and we'll be console logging the response in our front end.